What is up, ladies and gentlemen? How are y'all doing tonight? My name is Finger Guns, and I wanted to talk a little bit today for my hot take for, excuse me, May 15th, 2019. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Epic Store and kind of the controversy that's been going on there, and how it's really pro business and really anti-consumer. And there's a lot of problems with it in my mind, but to keep this as short, succinct, and as digestible as possible, I'm really just going to go over the major points. So Epic has been sweeping up exclusivity on a lot of games that are launching onto their store. Well, obviously they're launching onto their store because they're getting timed exclusivity or full exclusivity on a lot of these games that are releasing. On the back end, Epic is basically going to developers and publishers and saying, "Hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars and you will release this title on our store only, either as a timed exclusive or as just an exclusive on our store." This is reaching sort of a new critical mass, and it's gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out. Um, because a crowd-funded game called The Outer Wilds, not The Outer Worlds, which also went, um, I believe, timed Epic Game exclusive, um, which pissed a lot of people off. But now we have Outer Wilds, which was actually a crowd-funded game promised to release on Steam. Now that's not going to be the case. It's going to be a timed exclusive for um, the Epic Game Store, and it will eventually be available on Steam. We're not 100% sure what the time frame looks like specifically. Um, but this has caused a lot of blowback to the developers because you had people who basically gave money to the developers on the good faith that they would stick to what they said that they would do. And a lot of people gave money to the developers predicated on the fact that this game was going to be available on PC on Steam. And it's not been super great for them. And the reason why it's going to be so interesting to see it play out is because with crowdfunded games, it's a totally different experience. You don't have like a triple A backer. You don't have a big business like EA or Activision funding your development. So that the money for your development comes basically from what you crowd funded. And they came out with a statement. I forget the name of the developer, but they came out with a statement that basically said, because of the money that Epic Games is giving us, we will be able to complete this game up to the um, state a quality level that we previously weren't able to. And I guess that's nice and dandy and all, but a lot of people feel like they were lied to. Now, keep in mind this game was crowdfunded back in 2015, and they couldn't really have predicted the rise of the Epic Games Store like what we have actually gotten over the last 4 years since 2015. But even still, a lot of people are calling this a really bad bait and switch, and it could spell disaster for the launch of the game. And we're going to see how impactful this is as soon as the game launches and as soon as we start getting some sales numbers. Because a lot of people are straight up just refusing to buy it on the Epic Game Store, if at all, at this point. A lot of people are wishing they could take back their money and have lost all faith in the developer because of this sort of bait and switch tactic that people feel like they've been led into. And this does lead into a really interesting little tidbit, which I'll get to in a moment. Um, but my final thoughts are that the Epic Store is not a good thing. A lot of people are hailing it as kind of this underdog that will take down the tyranny of Steam. Well, why is Steam such a terrible thing? I mean, competition is good, but this isn't competition. Like Steam, for all intents and purposes, really has a kind of monopoly in the market, obviously. And we could discuss at length about the quality of Steam dropping over the years, in recent history in particular. And competition is good, but Epic Games buying exclusivity for a lot of these games totally defeats the point of competition. You're not competing with the enemy. You're literally buying loyalties and kneecapping your opponents. Um, so it's not competition at all, and it's actually really really anti-consumer because we the consumers don't have any power. We don't have the ability to fight this in any real way other than not going to the Epic Game Store to buy our games, while it's time exclusive. But that doesn't seem to be something that people are willing to do, which is kind of surprising because there's all this sentiment about how much people hate this exclusivity stuff, and yet when games are launching on the Epic Game Store, they seem to just sell fine. I think a lot of people are not sticking to their guns in the sense that they will say that this is bullshit, but they'll buy the game anyway. Um, like me, I know for a fact I'm not going to bother buying Borderlands 3 on the Epic Store in particular. I really want Borderlands 3. I really want to play it on PC. But I'm not going to buy it on the Epic Store. I absolutely refuse to. I think Epic Games, what they're doing right now, is an absolute cancer. It's really problematic, and we need to fight it. Um, so the interesting kind of offshoot that we can kind of get into here is there's a really interesting lawsuit going on where the Supreme Court recently decided that iPhone users, consumers of Apple products in particular, can actually sue Apple for trust fund, not trust fund. What's the word I'm looking for? Antitrust issues, which basically means anti-monopoly. So dissolving this monopoly. So the problem is that fundamentally, Apple has total and complete control over its own iTunes and App Store platform. You can't release an app to iPhones outside of it technically being illegally jailbroken, um, anyway from any source other than the Apple App Store. They have total control, and the prices are what Apple wants them to be on both the developer end and the consumer end, basically because nobody has a way to fight it. You can't go around Apple. That's how the system's designed. And the Supreme Court actually ruled that that might constitute as a monopoly and gave people the authority to actually sue Apple. Apple was defending themselves, saying, "Well, um, basically the iPhone user, so the end user essentially is not the target audience demographic, business associate. I'm not sure what the technical term would be, um, and therefore they can't sue Apple because Apple is not directly what's the best way of putting it? They're not conducting commerce directly with the iPhone user. They're conducting commerce with the developers on the back end. But the Supreme Court had other ideas, and they said, no, you can get sued over this. This is a monopoly, and the reason why this is important is because it could actually basically force an end to exclusivity in that sense. Because if this lawsuit does proceed and somebody actually does actively sue Apple over this antitrust monopoly problem, and they win, then that could basically force these platforms where you only have one store or one particular excuse me, it can basically force these single store platforms like PS4, Xbox, these systems that only have basically one platform where this particular product is available, um, to dissolve or allow other retailers to sell directly on those platforms. Um, Physical games are a little bit different because of the fact that you can order them off Amazon, you can get them at GameStop, Walmart, Target. There's a bunch of places that sell physical copies of games, so there's not much of a monopoly there because you can get these games from alternate sources technically. Um, but this goes back really, in my mind, to the Epic Game Store and exclusivity and stuff like that, where if this goes through and this sets a precedent of basically antitrust, anti-monopoly sort of positions for these digital retailers, these digital platforms to buy your games, it could mean that timed exclusivity even on Epic Games cannot be done, which I am actually a big proponent of because exclusivity is one of the most anti-consumer things that the industry does. And I have said for a very long time now, exclusivity should not be a thing. Um, Even if Sony is the one publishing your game and providing the development dollars for it, I don't think there's a reason why the game has to be exclusive. That's the bottom line. So Epic Games, bad. They are the epitome right now of anti-consumerism. They think they're somehow the hero because they're better for the developers technically, and the developers are making a little bit more money. So good for them, I guess. But the cost is shitting on the consumer, um, and not being concerned about the blowback, basically, if it makes you money. So we'll see how it all plays out. But Epic Games bad, antitrust lawsuits potentially good. Anyway, that has been my hot take for the day. Enjoy the rest of your night. Excuse me. High five.